Good evening. The new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has indicated there'll be major changes to Liz Truss's entire economic strategy. In a round of interviews this morning, Mr Hunt said mistakes had been made by the government and warned of what he called very difficult decisions ahead. He suggested taxes could rise to help restore market confidence and also talked about spending cuts. Mr Hunt was appointed yesterday after the Prime Minister sacked his predecessor, Kwasi Kwarteng. Here's our political correspondent, Ione Wells.
Congratulations, Mr Chancellor.
Hours into his new job, the Chancellor was tasked with setting out his stall. It was a very different stall from the one the Prime Minister set out. On Wednesday, she said she's absolutely not planning public spending cuts. But listen to this.
We have some very difficult decisions ahead. Difficult decisions on spending, which is not going to rise as much as people hope. And I'm going to be asking all government departments to find additional efficiency savings. That's going
One person's efficiency savings is another person's cuts.
Yes.
And remember when Liz Truss said the country can't tax its way to economic growth?
We're also going to have pressure on the tax side. Taxes are not going to come down by as much as people hoped, and some taxes will have to go up.
Then there was her pledge to boost spending on defence to 3% of national income by 2030.
But the Defence Department too is going to have to help find efficiencies. The long-term ability to fund an increase in defence spending will depend on stability in the economic situation and a healthily growing economy.
The Prime Minister moved in here just weeks ago, promising to cut taxes, to not cut public spending and to boost defence spending. The new Chancellor, who will base himself here just next door, has now said that all of those things are back on the table. This leaves massive questions for Liz Truss about what she stands for and who's really in charge after the economic plan that she won that Tory leadership election on now all hangs in the balance. The opposition were quick to say it was not enough for the Prime Minister to just replace her Chancellor.
They didn't just tank the British economy. They also clung on as they made the pound sink, clung on as they took our pensions to the brink of collapse, clung on as they pushed the mortgages and bills of the British public through the roof. They did all of this. All the pain our country faces now is down to them. And there's still one person clinging on, the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister's press conference yesterday did little to ease Conservative MPs' fears about her leadership. Supporters of her policies are annoyed she has U-turned on some of her tax cuts.
I have therefore decided to keep the increase in corporation tax that was planned by the previous government.
MPs who didn't like them think she's not the right person for the job. Some think it would be mad to oust her already. Others argue that would be better than the alternative.
Aren't you going to say sorry?
And she faces more clashes with them ahead, on possible spending cuts, on her plans to bring back fracking, on changes to house building and planning rules. She's still in the top job, but feels far from being completely in control of her increasingly divided party. Ione Wells, BBC News.
Well, the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, spoke to the new Chancellor yesterday, and he said there was a clear meeting of minds on the importance of stability. This afternoon, Mr Bailey also warned of the possibility of higher interest rates ahead, more than previously expected. Our business correspondent Mark Ashdown has this analysis.
Maria, hi.
All smiles launching the mini-budget at the end of September, and with it a new political phrase, Trussonomics, describing Liz Truss's vision for a high-growth, high-wage, low-tax economy. But just 3 weeks later, her new Chancellor has buried it.
Have you been given a clean slate? Can you change elements of the mini-budget if you want to?
Yes, and the fundamental thing the Prime Minister wants me to do and I need to do is to be completely honest with the country.
Trussonomics reversed then. Tax cuts likely replaced with tax rises. Huge investment replaced with a spending slowdown. This rethink has largely been driven by the turmoil in the financial markets since the mini-budget was announced. The pound has had a torrid time. The effective cost of government borrowing has soared, and the Bank of England had to step in with an emergency programme buying up government bonds to stabilise the pension sector. There is a pressing need then to restore some confidence and credibility.
Andrew.
Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said he spoke to the new Chancellor yesterday and had an immediate meeting of minds. But in a speech in Washington, D.C., he had this warning on interest rates.
We will not hesitate to raise interest rates to meet the inflation target. And as things stand today, my best guess is that inflationary pressures will require a stronger response than we perhaps thought in August.
The current base rate is 2.25%. Investors are expecting a rise of up to 1 percentage point in November to 3.25%. Most mortgage offers are currently already around 6%, but a bigger rise in the base rate will affect the economy elsewhere. And even with a change of approach, the government's problems remain the same. How to find tens of billions of pounds to help people with their energy bills and make the sums add up.
We're certainly looking at a really tough couple of years. We've got a very tough economic environment. We've got very stretched public finances. I think we're going to see some even further reversal of the tax cuts that we've had. And in addition, probably some very tight spending rounds.
The first verdict will come when financial markets open next week.
I don't expect a dramatic reversal because the devil will be in the detail. And when we find out the detail of the budget on the 31st of October, that will be perhaps a more holistic judgment being made by financial markets.
That's a fortnight away, a long time in the life of a Chancellor. Mark Ashdown, BBC News.
And let's go live now to Downing Street and our political correspondent, Helen Catt. Helen, what does all of this mean for Liz Truss?
Well, the Chancellor this morning was trying to calm things economically to reassure the financial markets. But in doing so, he's added to Liz Truss's political problems. Why is that? Well, that is because she built her leadership pitch on this big vision of regulation loosening, tax cutting, throwing everything at the economy, taking a massively different economic approach. If, as it very much sounds like, that is now about to be junked, it leaves those who didn't support her saying, well, what else does she offer? You know, what is she for as Prime Minister? But it also leaves those who really enthusiastically embraced and supported her plan, and there are some of those, disappointed that she has changed course and is not going to see that through. And all of this means it's a huge knock to her authority. Now, there are some Conservative MPs who think given time, given some breathing space, she may be able to start building that back, but there are plenty that you speak to who think that it's too late already, that her authority has been fatally undermined, and their thoughts, their conversations are now turning to who comes next. In the meantime, though, there are others who'll tell you the real power in the government lies. They don't think with Liz Truss in number 10 anymore, but next door in number 11 with the new Chancellor.
Helen, thank you very much. Helen Catt. Turkey says 41 people are known to have died in a coal mine near the Black Sea coast after a suspected methane explosion on Friday. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has visited the site at Amasra and promised a thorough investigation. Anjana Gadgil reports.
A funeral for one of the miners killed in the blast in the Black Sea coastal town of Amasra. Other families waited outside the morgue where their relatives' bodies lay. It's one of Turkey's deadliest industrial accidents in years and left smoke billowing into the sky. Over 100 people were working there at the time. More than 70 workers took part in rescue efforts which went on throughout the night. Crowds gathered around the head of the mine shaft. Many were family members of the dead and injured. It's believed methane ignited at a depth of 300 metres, causing a fire in one of the tunnels. President Erdogan made a visit to the scene and said he hoped no more lives would be lost.
Of course, we will find out how this explosion happened and if there are any people responsible for it with the prosecutions, which already started.
Turkey suffered its deadliest coal mining disaster in 2014 when 301 workers died in a blast in the western town of Soma. The local prosecutor's office said it was treating this incident at the state-owned coal mine as an accident and has begun an investigation. Anjana Gadgil, BBC News.
The footballer Mason Greenwood has been charged with attempted rape, engaging in controlling and coercive behaviour and assault occasioning actual bodily harm. The 21-year-old Manchester United striker was first arrested on suspicion of rape and assault in January and was immediately suspended from playing or training by the club. He was rearrested earlier today for allegedly breaching bail conditions. Anti-government protests are being held across Iran as activists intensify their demonstrations, sparked by the death in custody of a young woman. A number of videos show protests in at least 5 cities, including the capital, Tehran. In Ardabil, in the country's northwest, there have been reports of security forces opening fire on demonstrators. The city has been especially tense after police attacked children protesting at a school. In Rugby League, England have opened their World Cup campaign with a convincing win against Samoa in Newcastle, scoring an impressive 10 tries to win 60-6 at St James's Park. The reigning champions, Australia, will take on Fiji in Leeds later. Adam Wilde reports.
The Rugby League world has had to wait. A year later than planned, but a tournament unlike any the game has seen before. It was being branded as the biggest, the best in the sport's history. It had a lot to live up to. Frustratingly, that wait would go on a little longer. Major technical problems meant the opening ceremony was curtailed. It was left to the players to make their own introductions, Samoa building the atmosphere as only they can. England were going to need something special. The occasion definitely needed it. Young star Jack Welsby suddenly on hand to provide it.
England find a little bit of magic.
And with that, the moment the World Cup came alive. Dom Young, whose family is from Newcastle, he plays in Newcastle in Australia, now delighting the English crowd in Newcastle. Many have tipped him to be a standout star of this tournament. It isn't hard to see why.
It's a combination of circus tricks and Superman.
The first half scoreline more comfortable than many expected. In the second, England's World Cup charge really took off. 10 tries in total in a dominant display of power.
England unstoppable.
And so the result England desperately wanted. The hosts off to a perfect start. And for the wider Rugby League world, relief that this World Cup is finally underway. Adam Wilde, BBC News in Newcastle.
That's it for now. We're back with the late news at 10:05. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Goodbye.